This is me, is Queen Osedaru, and thank you for joining me for another wonderful edition of Ask an Aquarius. If you haven't already, please hit the red subscribe button and smack the bell. So guys, listen, today we're going to but we're going to continue our discussion on codependency. I talk about this because a lot of people are in codependent relationships that are extremely unhealthy, and they will argue you down about this, but it's something that happens really commonly. And today we're going to talk about signs that you or somebody you know may be in a codependent relationship. So I'm going to link the first video underneath this one so you guys can check it out. And the first thing I'm going to do is start with a definition, and then I'm going to go into 5 signs that you could be in one of these types of relationships. So, number 1, I went to everydayhealth.com and got this definition from Dr. Becker. Dr. Becker says that codependency can be defined as any relationship in which two people can become so invested in each other that they can't function independently anymore. The important part to take from this part of the definition is that it's any relationship. Husband, wife, mother, daughter, best friends, cousins. It can be any relationship. It doesn't have to be two people in a love relationship. You can be in a codependent relationship with your child, your parent, your neighbor even. This happens in any relationship. And the important part is that the two people can't function independently. This is a problem. It's fine to be emotionally attached to somebody, in love with somebody even. But once you can't take care of yourself, if something happens to them or they're busy or something like that, then that's a problem. If you can't function independently, you have now stepped your toe into being codependent. And in both cases, like it says here, they both can't function independently. So a lot of times, as we're getting ready to see in this definition, one person is more dominant, but they still can't function independently. All right. Dr. Becker continues to say, your mood, happiness, and identity are defined by the other person. So you can't even be happy or in a good mood or even identify yourself if the other person is in a bad mood, if the other person is unhappy, if the other person doesn't like how you've identified yourself. So this can be a really big deal. In a codependent relationship, there is usually one person who is more passive and can't make decisions for themselves, and a more dominant personality who gets some reward and satisfaction from controlling the other person and making decisions about how they will live. So usually one person is more passive. A lot of times we see codependency a lot of times when one of the two is drug addicted, alcohol addicted, mental health issues that have gone unaddressed, undiagnosed, untreated. So a lot of times the one person is more passive and they can't make decisions because they're either high or they're out of their mind or they're not based in reality. So the more dominant person is basically running their life, but they're saying that they're doing it to help them, but really they're feeling satisfaction from controlling them. So that's why it's unhealthy for both of them, because they're both engaging in this back and forth. Now, how do you know if you're in a codependent relationship? Well, there are a lot of signs, but here are the top 5 that I see repeatedly over and over again with people that I talk to, with people that are online, people on websites. I see this over and over again. The first thing is they will value the approval of others more than they value themselves. They value other people's opinions, what other people have to say, more than they even value their own inner knowledge and inner vibration. They'll listen to you before they listen to their own intuition. Big mistake. 2, lacking trust in yourself and having poor self-esteem. A lot of times, one or both of them, especially the more passive person, can have a lack of trust in themselves, and their self-esteem can be really low. Because think about it. They are allowing another more dominant person to call all the shots. So whenever it's time to call a shot, they don't even trust themselves to call it. You know, because they think they're going to do it wrong, or their self-esteem is so low that they just don't even think that they can. They just give up and let the acquiesce to the other person. That they have to make a decision, they'll probably even call the other person. Having fears of abandonment or an obsessive need for approval. This can happen a lot, especially with the person who is more passive, but it could be both of them. Because the passive person can be afraid of being abandoned because the dominant person is doing all their work. They're doing all their thinking for them. They're doing all of their thought processing for them. The dominant person may have fears of being abandoned because they are doing everything for the other person, so they can feel like the person like kind of belongs to them. So what if that person doesn't need you anymore? What if that person stops using drugs, for example? What if that person gets help? Then they won't need you anymore. So the dominant person can really be afraid of that and kind of keep them sick almost to keep them in that space. And they always need this obsessive need for approval. The dominant person may need the approval of the passive person. They want to feel like, you know, they're doing something right. And a lot of times that's why they're in a codependency, because they need approval. So they get with this passive person who can't take care of themselves and do everything for them to try to get approval. Having an unhealthy dependence on relationships, even at your own cost. Everybody knows a person who's always in a relationship. Like they can't even be single for a couple of moments. If they're not with somebody, if they break up with somebody, they're on to the next one immediately. This used to definitely be me. I was on to the next one, on to the next one, on to the next one. And we know a lot of people like this, and a lot of it's an unhealthy dependence on relationships because they constantly need to depend on somebody, even if it's negative for them, even if it's abusive or in the past it hasn't been good. A lot of times this unhealthy dependence on relationships, it can be because they need the person to take care of them, and it will feel like this obsessive emotional need, even though they don't need to be with anybody. And they don't have to be even dependent in this case. Like a person who's not chemically and substantially addicted, I think that's a word, who doesn't have a chemical or substance addiction, even that kind of person could be doing this. A regular old person with no issue could be running around doing this because their addiction is the relationships themselves, as you will see as you continue to think about the thought process. And the last one is having an exaggerated sense of responsibility for the actions of others. A lot of times the dominant person has this. They feel very responsible for the other person. To a fault, actually. I remember, like, I've had times when they've told me, they were like, well, nobody's here to take care of them, or they can't take care of themselves, or who else is going to do it? They have this exaggerated sense like the other person is 5 years old and can't take care of themselves, when the truth is they can take care of themselves. They're just not, because you're doing everything for them. And if they can't take care of themselves in the cases of drug and alcohol abuse, well, letting them hit rock bottom is the only way they're going to come back up. So if you have an alcoholic or a drug addict or somebody, you know, like that in your life, if it's your mom, your dad, your lover, and you're constantly doing everything for them, they're never going to get better. So in that case, you're basically enabling them to continue to be sick, to be addicted, whatever the case is. So the codependent person, the more dominant codependent person, is actually, in this case, keeping the other one sick so they can continue to take care of them, control them, and get approval from them, you see. And a lot of relationships are like this. I see it in a lot of love relationships, unfortunately. So consider these thoughts. Do you know someone who's codependent? Are you codependent? Based on these 5 things, are you codependent? And if you are, or if you know someone who is, admit it, keep it real, and seek help for it. There's a lot of therapeutic advice about this online. There's a lot of self-help books to help you with this online. There's a lot of therapists who actually specialize in codependency because it happens a lot, especially with addiction. So if you have a person that's addicted, oftentimes the dominant codependent person in the relationship holds back the treatment, holds back the process by their very behavior. So a lot of therapists want to talk to both of them because the dominant person and the passive person are both sick. The passive person, it has 2 illnesses. They have a dependency on the relationship and whatever the other illness is, the other thing that's making them passive. The dominant person is addicted to the relationship and has other unhealthy needs such as fear of abandonment, need for approval, need to control. So they both have some strong unhealthiness going on, and these types of relationships can put them both into a real bad situation. So if you've identified this as being your reality, the best thing to do is seek help immediately. Okay? All right, guys, I hope that helps you. It's time for me to get going. So if you'd like to send me a love donation, I'll leave my PayPal. If you'd like to send me a gift, I'll leave my Amazon wish list. If you would like to get in touch with me, I'll leave all my information. See you guys later. Bye-bye.